The great hall of the Galactic Assembly had never been so quiet. 2,000 representatives from across the known universe sat in their seats, and not one of them spoke. The holographic display in the center of the chamber showed a map of conquered worlds. 12 star systems marked in blood red. 12 civilizations erased in 3 months. Lisa Monroe sat in the far corner of the observer section, where humans were always placed. She was 42 years old, a commander in Earth's diplomatic corps, and she had spent 15 years in this assembly hall. 15 years of being ignored. 15 years of watching elder species make decisions that affected billions while humans were told to sit quietly and learn. The High Arbiter rose from his central throne. He was ancient even by standards, his silver skin wrinkled with age, his 4 arms trembling slightly as he raised them for silence he did not need. The room was already silent with fear. "The collective has taken the system," announced. His voice echoed through the chamber. "The defense fleet we sent was destroyed within 6 hours. There were no survivors." A murmur finally broke through the crowd. Lisa watched the faces around her. They clicked their mandibles in distress. The changed colors rapidly, shifting through shades of worried purple. They simply closed all 7 of their eyes in something like prayer. "That fleet had 400 ships," someone called out. 400 ships from 7 species. How can they be gone?" Lowered his head. "They do not fight as we do. They do not negotiate. They do not accept surrender. They consume what they conquer and move on. Our tactics mean nothing to them. Our weapons barely slow them down." Ambassador of the stood from his seat. His body was rigid with tension. "High Arbiter, with respect, we must discuss all options, every option, even the ones we have dismissed before." "There are no options left," replied. "We have sent our finest fleets. We have used our most advanced weapons. We have tried diplomacy, deception, and desperate sacrifice. Nothing has worked." "There is one option we have not tried," said. His compound eyes shifted briefly toward the observer section, toward Lisa. "The humans have offered their assistance multiple times. Perhaps we should finally accept." The reaction was immediate and violent. Shouts erupted across the chamber. Representatives rose from their seats in anger. The delegate nearest to actually spat on the floor. "Humans?" The word came from an elder, spoken like a curse. "You would unleash those creatures on the galaxy. They are barely civilized. They have been part of our community for only 200 years. 200 years is nothing. They are children playing with fire." "Dangerous children," another voice added. "Have you read their history? They invented weapons capable of destroying their own world before they even left their planet. They fight among themselves constantly. They are aggressive, unpredictable, and utterly without the emotional control necessary for proper warfare." Lisa sat very still. She had heard these arguments before. Every human who served in the diplomatic corps had heard them. The elder species had long memories, and they had studied Earth's history with horrified fascination. They knew about the world wars. They knew about nuclear weapons. They knew about every genocide, every atrocity, every dark chapter of human existence. What they did not know or refused to see was everything else. "The humans are too volatile," said, settling the matter with a wave of his hand. "We cannot risk giving them military authority. If by some miracle they defeated what would stop them from turning on us next? No, we will find another way." "What other way?" demanded. "Our fleets are broken. Our worlds are falling. They will reach the core systems within 6 weeks. If we do not act now, there will be no Galactic Council left to protect." Stared at for a long moment. The old looked tired, Lisa realized. Tired and afraid and completely out of ideas. "This session is adjourned," finally said. "We will reconvene tomorrow to discuss defensive positioning for the core worlds." The representatives began to file out. Some were arguing, others were weeping. A few simply stared at nothing, already mourning everything they were about to lose. Lisa remained in her seat until the hall was nearly empty. passed by her section and paused. Their eyes met briefly. The ambassador gave a small nod, almost imperceptible, before continuing on his way. Lisa finally stood and made her way through the empty corridors to her quarters. The room was small and plain, nothing like the luxurious suites given to representatives of the elder species. But it had a secure communication terminal, and that was all she needed. She sat down and entered her encryption codes. The connection took a few seconds to establish, bouncing through a dozen relay stations before reaching Earth. "Commander Monroe," a voice said, "we monitored the session. What is your assessment?" Lisa considered her words carefully. "They are not ready yet, Director. They are still too proud, too afraid of us. They would rather die than ask humans for help." A pause, then, "And what do you recommend?" Lisa thought about trembling hands. She thought about the fear in the eyes of beings who had ruled the galaxy for. She thought about 12-star systems burning. "Give them time," she said. "When they get close enough, when they can see their own worlds burning, they will change their minds. Pride is a luxury that extinction cannot afford." "And if they still refuse?" Lisa leaned back in her chair. "Then they will fall, and we will remember them. But I do not think it will come to that. They are coming fast. Soon enough, we will be their last choice. And when they have no choices left, they will do what every species does when facing the end." "Which is?" Lisa allowed herself a small, sad smile. "They will unleash the humans." She ended the transmission and sat alone in the darkness. Somewhere out there, they were advancing. Somewhere out there, billions of beings were dying. And here she sat, waiting for the galaxy to get desperate enough to trust her people. It would not be long now. Lisa had watched enough empires crumble to know the signs. The Galactic Council was standing at the edge of oblivion, and they would soon realize that the monsters they feared might be the only ones capable of saving them. She just hoped they would realize it before it was too late. Ambassador had not slept in 3 days. His compound eyes ached from staring at screens, and his chitin felt dry and brittle from stress. But he could not stop reading. The files spread across his private terminal were classified at the highest level. Accessing them was a crime punishable by exile. But exile meant nothing if the entire civilization was about to be erased. The folder was labeled simply, "Species Assessment Humans." Had been a diplomat for 60 years. He had studied hundreds of species, learned their customs, their weaknesses, their fears, but nothing had prepared him for what he found in these files. The first document was a psychological profile compiled by scientists who had observed humanity for decades. Read slowly, translating the clinical language into something his mind could process. "Subject species displays unprecedented bonding behavior," the report stated. "Humans form emotional attachments not only with members of their own species, but with other species, with artificial constructs, and even with inanimate objects. They name their vehicles. They speak to their plants. They treat machines as family members. Once a human has bonded with something, they will defend it with irrational ferocity. They will sacrifice their own lives for beings they have known for only days." This behavior defies all models of evolutionary self-preservation. Clicked his mandibles nervously. He had seen this himself. Human diplomats often asked about the health of his family, remembered the names of his children, brought small gifts from there for no strategic reason. He had assumed it was manipulation. Now he was not sure. The next document was a military analysis. The author was a strategist who had dedicated his life to understanding potential threats. "Human warfare does not follow logical patterns," the analysis warned. "When faced with superior forces, standard species behavior involves retreat, surrender, or negotiation. Humans often respond by attacking with increased aggression. Historical records show numerous instances of small human units holding positions against overwhelming odds, not because victory was possible, but because surrender was unacceptable to them. They call this making a last stand. They celebrate such events in their culture. They teach their children to admire those who die fighting rather than those who survive through wisdom. Opened another file. This one contained footage from Earth's history, collected by observers who had monitored the planet before first contact. He watched humans charge across open ground into automatic weapons fire. He watched pilots deliberately crash their aircraft into enemy ships. He watched medics run toward explosions instead of away from them. The footage was over 300 years old, from a conflict humans called the Second World War. But the behavior patterns were consistent with more recent observations. A separate report focused on human physiology and its effects on psychology. Humans originate from a Class 4 death world, the document explained. Their planet has extreme temperature variations, constant geological instability, predators in every environment, and numerous diseases that kill millions annually. Humans evolved not by avoiding danger but by adapting to it. They heal from injuries that would kill other species. They function effectively across temperature ranges that span 60 degrees. They can survive for weeks without food, days without water, and continue fighting with wounds that should render them unconscious. Most significantly, human bodies produce numerous chemical compounds in response to stress that enhance their physical capabilities while reducing their perception of pain. When frightened, humans do not simply flee. Their bodies prepare them to fight to the death. Paused the reading to collect himself. His own species, had evolved on a gentle world of warm seas and abundant food. They had achieved through cooperation and careful planning. The idea of a species forged by constant danger was difficult to process. He opened the next file. This one was marked with multiple warning symbols. The following observations are classified at the highest level due to their potential to cause panic among council species. Read on. Human soldiers have been observed engaging in recreational activities during active combat. They tell jokes while under fire. They sing songs during long marches to certain death. They form deep friendships in the middle of wars and mourn fallen comrades with rituals that seem to increase their combat effectiveness rather than diminish it. Psychological evaluations suggest that humans process fear differently than other known species. They do not suppress it or avoid it. They accept it, adapt to it, and continue functioning. Multiple analysts have concluded that humans are not fearless. They are simply accustomed to being afraid and have learned to act anyway. The final document in the folder was a strategic recommendation written by a joint committee of all elder species. Recognize the format. This was the official policy that had kept humanity locked out of military authority for 2 centuries. Recommendation. Under no circumstances should humans be given command authority over multi-species military operations. Under no circumstances should humans be informed of the full capabilities of Council defense systems. Under no circumstances should humans be given cause to view the Council as a threat to their species or their bonded companions. Reasoning. If properly motivated, humans represent an existential threat to galactic stability. Their psychology makes them impossible to deter through conventional means. They do not respond to shows of force. They do not calculate odds rationally. They form loyalties that transcend self-interest and will pursue vengeance across generations. The safest strategy is to keep humans contained, controlled, and unaware of how dangerous they truly are. Conclusion. Humans must never be given a reason to fight. Humans must never be given something to protect. Humans must never be made desperate. Closed the file and sat in the darkness of his quarters. For 60 years, he had accepted the Council's wisdom. Humans were dangerous, unpredictable, too young and too violent to be trusted. He had believed it because everyone believed it, because believing it was easier than questioning it. But now they were coming, and everything the Council feared about humanity was exactly what they needed. Opened a new channel and composed a message request. It was addressed to Commander Lisa Monroe, Human Observer, requesting a private meeting at her earliest convenience. He sent the message before he could change his mind. The Council had spent 2 centuries trying to keep humans contained, now was about to ask them for help. He hoped they would forgive the galaxy for how it had treated them, because if they did not, that might be the least of their problems. The meeting room beneath the assembly hall had not been used in decades. Dust covered the ancient furniture, and the lights flickered with age. It was perfect for a conversation that could end both their careers. Lisa arrived first. She had received his message with no surprise. She had seen the way he looked at her during the council session. She had recognized the desperation in his compound eyes. It was only a matter of time before someone broke ranks. Entered a few minutes later, checking behind him to ensure he had not been followed. His movements were nervous, his mandibles clicking rapidly. Lisa gestured to a chair across from her own. "Ambassador," she said calmly, "thank you for reaching out." Commander Monroe settled into the seat, his body rigid with tension. "I must be direct. We do not have time for diplomatic games." "I appreciate directness." Paused, gathering his thoughts. "The Council is going to fall, you know this, I know this. Within 6 weeks they will reach the core worlds. They will destroy everything we have built over, unless something changes." Lisa nodded slowly. "And you believe humans can change things?" "I have read the classified files," admitted. "I know why the Council fears your species. I know about your history, your psychology, your capacity for violence. But I also know that they cannot be stopped by conventional means. We have tried everything. We have failed at everything. You are our only option left." Lisa was quiet for a moment. She had waited 15 years to hear these words. 15 years of patience, of watching her people be dismissed and mocked, of knowing that humans could help but being the chance. Part of her wanted to refuse. Part of her wanted to let the Council burn for its arrogance. But that was not who humans were, not really. "What do you want from us?" she asked. Leaned forward. "Military intervention. Your fleets, your soldiers, your strategies. Whatever it takes to stop the—" "And what are you offering in return?" This was the question had dreaded. He had consulted with economists, strategists, and diplomats before coming here. He had prepared a list of territorial concessions, resource rights, and trade agreements that might satisfy human ambitions. He opened his mouth to begin the negotiation. Lisa held up a hand. "Before you answer, let me tell you what we do not want. We do not want your territory. We do not want your resources. We do not want to rule the galaxy or replace the Council. We do not want revenge for how you have treated us." His mandibles stopped clicking. "Then what do you want?" "A seat at the table," Lisa said simply. "A real seat, not the observer section, not the corner where children are sent to watch the adults. We want to be members of this community, equal members. We want to be judged by what we do, not by what you fear we might do." The ambassador was silent for a long time. "That is all." "That is everything." Lisa leaned back in her chair. "Ambassador, humans have spent 200 years being called monsters. We have heard every insult, every warning, every lecture about our violent history. We know what we are capable of. We remember our worst moments better than anyone. But that is not all we are." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. "Humans fight so hard because we love so deeply. We go to war because we cannot stand to see others suffer. We charge into fire because we cannot leave our friends behind. Every terrible thing in our history happened because someone cared too much about something and went too far defending it. That same passion is why we build, why we create, why we reach for the stars even when the odds say we should stay home." Listened without interruption. "We do not want to conquer you," Lisa continued. "We want to belong. We want to prove that the species you fear can also be the species that saves you, that is worth more to us than any territory or resources you could offer." The ambassador considered her words. In 60 years of diplomacy, he had negotiated with hundreds of species. He had seen every form of greed, every type of ambition, every manipulation and deception that sentient beings could devise. But he had never encountered a species that asked only to be accepted. "I will need to present your terms to the Council," said finally. "They will not be happy. Admitting they need help from humans will be difficult for many of them." "I know." Lisa allowed herself a small smile. "That is why we are not asking them to admit anything publicly. All they need to do is send a formal request for military assistance. One message: we will handle the rest. And if they refuse, if their pride prevents them from asking—" Lisa's smile faded. "Then they will die proud, and we will remember them fondly. But I do not think it will come to that. When they are close enough to see with their own eyes, when their own worlds are burning, they will send the message." Stood and extended one of his 4 hands in the human custom. Lisa rose and shook it. "I will do what I can," the ambassador promised. "I know you will." Left the way he had come, slipping through shadows and empty corridors, Lisa remained in the dusty room for a while longer, thinking about everything that might come next. 2 days later, she received word that had presented her terms to a secret committee of senior council members. The arguments had been fierce. Several delegates had stormed out in anger, but no one had rejected the offer outright. They were considering it. On the same day, they conquered 2 more systems. Lisa sent her own message to Earth, informing President Daniel Shaw and Admiral Karen West of the situation. The human fleet was already positioned along the border of Council space, waiting for the call. Soldiers trained in orbital drops and close quarters combat waited in their barracks, playing cards and telling jokes and writing letters home. They were ready. They had always been ready. Now they just needed permission. Lisa looked out her window at the alien stars. Somewhere out there, they were advancing. Somewhere out there, billions of beings were waiting to see if the galaxy would survive. And somewhere on Earth, human soldiers were preparing to do what humans had always done. Run toward the fire, protect the ones who could not protect themselves, and prove once and for all that monsters could also be heroes. The message arrived at Earth Command at exactly midnight. It was short, formal, and had clearly been written through gritted teeth. The Galactic Council formally requests military assistance from the United Earth government in defense against the collective. We await your response. President Daniel Shaw read the message 3 times before allowing himself to smile. He was 61 years old, a former soldier who had served 30 years before entering politics. He had waited his entire life for this moment. "Admiral West," he said, turning to the woman beside him, "how soon can we move?" Karen West was already pulling up fleet positions on the holographic display. At 54, she was the most experienced combat commander in human history, though she had never fought a real war. Humans had not been allowed to fight real wars, until now. "The fleet is already positioned along the border," she reported. "We can be at Prime in 18 hours. They will arrive in 22. That gives us 4 hours to set up defensive positions." Shaw nodded. "Do it. And Admiral, make sure our people know what they are fighting for. This is not just about saving the Council. This is about proving who we are." "Understood, sir." 18 hours later, the human fleet dropped out of hyperspace above Prime. 300 warships arranged themselves in a defensive formation around the planet. From the surface, the Council members watched in stunned silence as human vessels took positions their own fleets had abandoned weeks ago. High Arbiter stood at his window, his 4 arms hanging limp at his sides. He had opposed this decision until the very end. He had argued, pleaded, and threatened. But the other Council members had overruled him. They were too afraid to die proud. Now he watched human ships prepare to fight for a world that had treated them like dangerous animals. He did not understand it. He was not sure he ever would. On the bridge of the carrier Franklin, Captain Cole reviewed his orders one final time. He was 34 years old, young for a command this important. But age meant little in a species that sent teenagers to war. "All hands, this is the captain," he announced over the ship's communication system. "In 4 hours, we are going to face an enemy that has destroyed every fleet sent against it. An enemy that does not negotiate, does not surrender, and does not show mercy. The Council species tried to fight them with logic and careful tactics. They failed." He paused, letting the words sink in. "We are not going to fight with logic. We are going to fight like humans. We are going to get close. We are going to hit hard. We are going to make them understand that some species do not break when the odds are against them. Some species get angry." Cheers erupted throughout the ship. In the Marine barracks, Sergeant Maria Santos pumped her fist and shouted with her squad. They had trained their entire careers for a battle they thought would never come. Now it was here. "Remember," Cole continued, "we are fighting for people who spent 200 years telling us we were monsters. People who locked us out, looked down on us, and warned their children about humans the way we warn our children about nightmares. Today we prove them wrong. Today we show them what monsters can do when they fight for something good. All hands to battle stations. Let's make history." They arrived exactly on schedule. Their fleet was massive, over 500 ships of black metal and pulsing red energy. They moved in perfect formation, each vessel connected to a central command intelligence that coordinated their attacks with mathematical precision. They had destroyed 12 civilizations with these tactics. They expected the humans to fight like every other species, maintain distance, preserve ships, retreat when losses became too high. They were wrong. Admiral West gave the order, and the human fleet surged forward. Instead of keeping safe range, human ships accelerated directly into the formation. The enemy's targeting systems struggled to track vessels moving at speeds that should have been suicidal. The Franklin led the charge. Captain Cole stood at his command console, watching enemy fire streak past his. A blast struck the forward hull and the ship shook violently. Damage reports flooded in. Cole ignored them. "Closer," he ordered. "Get us closer." The command vessel was enormous, a fortress of metal and weapons that served as the brain of their fleet. Every other species had tried to destroy it from a distance, using long-range weapons and careful tactics. Every attempt had failed. Cole had a different plan. The Franklin took hit after hit as it pushed through the enemy formation. Fires broke out on multiple decks. Crew members died at their stations, but the ship kept moving, kept firing, kept advancing. On the surface of Prime, Maria Santos and her squad launched from into the middle of an enemy landing force. They had sent ground troops to capture the Council leadership. They expected to face demoralized alien defenders. Instead, they found humans. Maria hit the ground running, her weapon already firing. Around her, squad members spread out in practiced formations. A soldier aimed at her, and she threw herself sideways, rolled, and came up shooting. The enemy fell. "Keep moving," she shouted. "Protect the Council building." A blast caught Private Tommy Park in the leg. He went down hard, screaming in pain. Maria did not hesitate. She grabbed him by his armor and dragged him toward cover while still firing with her free hand. "Medic," she called. "We need a medic here." Corporal Jenny appeared, already applying emergency treatment to Park's wound. "I've got him, Sarge. Keep going." Maria nodded and charged back into the fight. This was what humans did. They did not leave their wounded behind. They did not retreat when logic demanded it. They fought harder. Above the planet, the battle reached its peak. The human fleet had suffered terrible losses, but so had the enemy command intelligence was struggling to adapt to tactics it had never encountered. Human pilots were flying patterns that should have been impossible, accepting damage that should have been fatal, continuing to fight long past the point where any rational species would have fled. Captain Cole watched his tactical display. The Franklin was burning. Half its weapons were gone, The engines were failing, but they were close now, so close. "All hands abandon ship," he ordered. "Get to the escape pods now." His crew hesitated. They did not want to leave him. "That is an order," Cole said firmly. "I need 30 seconds. Give me 30 seconds and then get out." They went. The escape pods launched in rapid succession, carrying the surviving crew away from the dying ship. Cole remained at his console, steering the Franklin toward the command vessel. 30 seconds was all he needed. The Franklin struck the command ship at full speed. The impact was catastrophic. Both vessels exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the space around Prime. The fleet, suddenly cut off from their central intelligence, fell into chaos. Human ships pressed the advantage. Without coordination, the enemy could not respond effectively. One by one, vessels began to fall back, then to flee, then to die. On the surface, the ground troops lost their direction at the same moment. Maria and her squad cut through them like a blade through paper. Within an hour, the landing force was destroyed. High Arbiter watched from his window as the last ships retreated into hyperspace. He watched human soldiers helping wounded aliens to safety. He watched medics treating council species with the same care they showed their own. He watched the sky fill with debris from the battle that had saved his world. Tears ran down his silver face. In 2,000 years of life, he had never cried. He had thought himself above such primitive displays of emotion. Now he understood. Some emotions were not primitive. Some emotions were the most advanced thing in the universe. He had called humans monsters. He had been so wrong. 3 months had passed since the Battle of Prime. The collective had been pushed back to the outer rim of the galaxy, broken but not destroyed. They would return someday, but today was not about them. Today was about remembering. The Memorial Plaza had been built on the exact spot where Maria Santos and her squad had made their stand. Thousands of beings from dozens of species filled the space, standing together in silence. For the first time in galactic history, aliens and humans shared the same ground without fear or suspicion. Lisa Monroe stood near the front, wearing her formal diplomatic uniform. 3 months ago, she had been a minor observer with no real power. Now she was the official ambassador of Earth to the Galactic Council, with a seat at the central table and a voice that carried weight. The change still felt unreal. Beside her stood Admiral Corinne West, her left arm in a sling from injuries she had received coordinating the battle from her command ship. She had refused to leave the bridge even when hull breaches threatened to pull her into space. Her crew had to physically carry her to the medical bay after the fighting ended. Captain Cole stood on her other side. He had survived the destruction of the Franklin, ejected in a personal escape pod moments before impact. The rescue teams found him drifting in space 3 hours later, unconscious but alive. When he woke up and learned that his sacrifice had turned the battle, he had simply nodded and asked about his crew. 212 of his people had died. He knew every single name. High Arbiter approached the memorial podium. His 4 arms no longer trembled. His silver skin seemed brighter than it had been during those dark days of despair. He had aged decades in the months since the invasion began, but something in his eyes was different now. Softer, wiser. "We gather today to honor the fallen," began, his voice carrying across the silent plaza. 12,000 humans died defending our worlds. 12,000 beings who had no obligation to fight for us. 12,000 heroes who gave everything for species that had given them nothing but contempt. He paused, looking out at the mixed crowd of aliens and humans. "I have lived for 2,000 years. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched civilizations bloom and wither. In all that time, I believed I understood the universe. I believed I understood what made a species great. I was wrong." The crowd remained perfectly still. "We called humans aggressive. We called them dangerous. We called them monsters who could not be trusted with power. We locked them out of our councils, them our respect, and warned our children to fear them. We did this because their history frightened us, because their capacity for violence made us uncomfortable, because it was easier to dismiss them than to understand them. His voice cracked slightly. And when our worlds burned, when our fleets were destroyed, when we had exhausted every option and faced extinction, we turned to those same humans and begged for help. We asked the monsters to save us, and they did. He gestured toward the rows of memorial stones behind him. Each stone bore a human name. Not because we deserved it, not because we had earned their loyalty. They saved us because that is who they are. They run toward danger. They protect the weak. They sacrifice themselves for strangers. The same traits that terrified us are the traits that saved us. Turned to face Lisa directly. Ambassador Monroe, on behalf of the Galactic Council and all the species we represent, I offer humanity our deepest apology. We were wrong about your people. We were wrong about everything. And we are eternally grateful that you chose to prove us wrong through action rather than letting us die with our prejudices. Lisa stepped forward to the podium. She had prepared a speech, but looking out at the crowd, she set it aside. High Arbiter, on behalf of Earth, I accept your apology, but I want to say something to everyone here today. She took a breath. Humans are not saints. We have done terrible things throughout our history. We have waged wars, committed atrocities, and treated each other with unimaginable cruelty. The Council was not entirely wrong to be cautious of us. Some of that caution was earned. The crowd stirred slightly. But we are more than our worst moments. Every species is. We came to your aid not because we wanted to prove something, but because we could not stand by and watch innocent beings die. Because when we see someone in trouble, we help. Even if that someone spent 2 centuries calling us monsters. Even if helping means dying. Lisa looked at the memorial stones. The humans who fell here did not die for glory or conquest. They died because they cared, because they saw your people, your children, your homes, and they could not look away. That is the truth about humanity. We fight because we love. We sacrifice because we cannot bear to lose what we cherish. And once you are part of our family, once we have bonded with you, we will move stars to keep you safe. She smiled sadly. You asked us to save you because you had no other choice. You unleashed the humans as a last resort. But here is what I want you to understand. You do not need to be desperate to ask us for help. You do not need to be dying to receive our friendship. We were always willing to stand beside you. All you had to do was ask. The ceremony continued with the reading of names. 12,000 names spoken aloud one by one, echoing across the plaza. It took hours. No one left. Afterward, as the crowd dispersed, Ambassador found Lisa standing alone by the memorial stones. He approached quietly and stood beside her. You could have asked for anything, he said. After what you did, you could have demanded control of the council, territory, resources, power. Instead, you asked only for acceptance. Lisa traced her fingers across a carved name, Tommy Park. The private Maria Santos had dragged to safety. He had died 3 weeks later from complications of his wound. He was 22 years old. Power fades, she said softly. Territories change hands. Resources are consumed, but being part of a family, belonging somewhere, that lasts, that matters. Considered her words. Some on the council still do not trust you. They fear what humans might do now that you have proven your strength. I know, Lisa did not seem troubled. Trust takes time. We have been here for 200 years. We can be patient for 200 more. Eventually they will see us for what we are. And if they do not, at least we know the truth. Which is? Lisa turned to face the alien ambassador. That humans are not monsters, we never were. We are just a young species that loves too deeply and fights too hard for the things we care about. The galaxy will understand that eventually. And until then, we will keep showing them. One act of kindness at a time. One sacrifice at a time. One battle at a time. A communication device beeped at her belt. Lisa checked the message and raised an eyebrow. "Speaking of which," she said, "there is a distress signal from the outer reaches, a species called the. They are under attack by raiders and asking if anyone can help." Frowned. "They are not council members. They refused to join centuries ago because they did not trust larger civilizations." "I know." Lisa was already walking toward the communications center, "but they need help, and we have ships nearby. The council has not authorized intervention." Lisa paused and looked back at the ambassador with a gentle smile. "The council spent 200 years telling us what we could not do. I think it is time we started showing them what we will do, whether they authorize it or not." She walked away, already composing orders for the nearest human fleet. Watched her go, shaking his head in something that might have been exasperation or admiration. Above the memorial plaza, the stars shone cold and distant, but they seemed less empty now, less hostile, because somewhere out there, human ships were already moving toward the outer reaches, moving toward a species they had never met to fight a battle they had no obligation to join. Because that was what humans did. They ran toward the fire, and the galaxy was beginning to understand that this was not something to fear, it was something to celebrate. The age of humanity had finally begun.